welcome to the Musician's Cut. This series covers specific albums and will give the musician's perspective on the album and its tracks, kind of like a director's commentary on a Blu-ray or something like that. On this episode, we will cover Dream Hacker, the new album by our guest, otay. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is otay. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm based in New York, but often running around China and New York for installation, performance art, and also mainly a musician. So I delve into sonic spheres quite a lot. Yes, I released a new album, Dream Hacker, that wanders around the spheres of dreams lately, mainly in China, and analyze a few points that give me a lot of inspirations, but not only that, philosophies that benefit myself in selfhood. So, yeah.
Very cool. I have a lot of questions around the whole dream thing,
Mm-hmm.
and also a lot of questions around the psychology of those dreams and what they could mean and that sort of stuff. So, what is the inspiration for your name, otay?
Oteoni, so back in 2012, I went to Niagara Falls with my parents. And when I was there, it's all a very tourist-ish place because I don't know if we need to delve into the history quite a bit here. Everything is very organized in terms of all these Native American descents working where and where do they live. And so I was just very bored because it's definitely not a nature site. And my parents was very happy to step into Niagara Falls, still very beautiful. But I heard flute sounds. So I followed the flute and found this person selling flutes. And he saw me from afar and asked me and waved at me and asked me to come like this. So I did, and this person introduced himself to me. His name is Coda. And immediately he asked me if he could choose a name for me. And I thought, this is interesting. Yes, sure. And he said, Oteoni. And I asked what it means. He said, wolf. And he also said that his name is Coda, which means bear. Later, he also introduced me that he's from the Seneca area reservations and is a descent of Native American. And this name has stuck with me because we often introduce each other by achievements, by goals, by your status in the society, but very rarely will somebody introduce himself as an animal. So I really love that. And quite a bit for my work, I always chase and ride on the instincts rather than any scientific or academic paperwork. So I have kept the name and decided to use it for my moniker. For some years, I kept in touch with John, which is Coda. That's his English name. I haven't been in the luck of getting in touch with him lately. So, yeah, best luck to this person. And, one day I hope I can deliver music to him as well. Or maybe we can jam
Yeah.
using the instruments he built himself.
Very cool. Very cool. Wow. That's such a unique story because you keep hearing like when I research what a song or sorry, what an artist's name means, usually it's just, oh, we put it in a generator and this is what it came up with and that's about it. It doesn't really mean anything else. But to have something like that is a lot more special and it's also a lot more memorable. So, Dream Hacker. After doing some research for the interview, I discovered that this album is based on a dream. Could you explain what happened in the dream?
I think it's a astral projection that I was having, which I saw a hand and it seems like a kid's hand throwing stones on each other. Then a fixation of a figure coming, which is two stones lined up like this. And the overlapping part in the middle shoots out a really bright light. And then I saw myself floating face down, seeing myself laying on bed. In the meanwhile, I heard whispering in the ear saying, what connects to you and me is the overlapping part. And I was chewing this sentence quite a bit in my dream also. And then I woke up and I wrote down the sentence, but I didn't know what it meant. But the feeling of understanding it really applies into reality. And I've been, finding a lot of overlapping part, which is so the quality between two or more parties that's very similar or creates a repercussion to each other. I think that is only going to get louder as people come to realize it and try to connect with each other rather than create separation or chaos to deviate from each other. And for example, I also found similarities between me and a cat, a stray cat that was wandering around my community, which I adopted when I was in China. That's why in the album insert, which I designed myself, there's a picture of that cat. That is something that inspired me from that dream for sure. And I want to kind of make a memorial of that. So that's the Dream Hacker. And it also, records a lot of the memory of me back in China, which was comparatively, if you listen to my previous album, some of the songs are really hard to listen to, even for myself, because it's definitely a witness of some of the hardest time of me living in the US. So that's a change that I might as well adapt because I love to be happy.
Yeah, of course. It's fascinating, the whole, like, what a dream could mean and what it could represent. And I think you're trying to capture that with this album, and it's really special. So, how about the hacker part of the title? Why hacker?
Trying to understand the whispering, the sentence is a hacking process for me. Bringing something from your dream to reality when you wake up and bring meanings or found it meaningless is a hacking part for me. And I always try to decipher messages from everything. And it somehow makes my life more colorful. Also, there's a part of Chinese culture that's really, really delve into dreams quite a lot. For example, 周公梦蝶. There's a scholar, an ancient scholar in China who specifically studied dreams and made relationship with dreams that bring him more of a revelation in life and sort of the way that he reconciled himself in reality. I just decipher the messages into my own way and try to make peace with myself or bring some kind of philosophy that's useful in my daily interactions with people.
We're going to go into the tracks of the album. So
Sure.
We're going to go track by track. You Do / Rub is the first track of the album. It pulls you into this dreamlike atmosphere of the album immediately.
Yes.
Could you tell us what inspired this track?
Yes. You Do and Rub is actually two songs. But because I really want to immediately run to Rub after You Do, so we combine these two together digitally. You Do, it's a sad story. My dad really wants to have a boy, and I was born in the 90s, which means under the one-child policy. Last time when I went home, my dad told me that he really wanted a boy again. That really surprised me, but also, all his friends around him is not a good influence as well. And I came from a really small town, and people are still really traditional and not in a good sense, and really closed up. So You Do is trying to for advocate myself for this. Don't drench in this sadness. It's okay. You're a girl, but why not? And also at the time when I was in China, there's a big case broke up of human trafficking of all the girls to very poor villagers who are men that had no wife. So after one-child policy, because so many girls were killed out of infancy, because the family really wanted a boy back in the day, there's a outrageous imbalance between the population of men and women. So most men, if they're in a monogamous interest, they can't find a wife. So people will buy women to become their wife. So human trafficking start to happen. The incident broke out of a picture of a woman being chained inside a little shack, and it had been one of the most outrageous news happened in China, and a lot of awareness and a lot of corruption as well. And it's becoming a business that involves the town people. It's a mess. So I created a song amidst all of this. And Rub, it's really a song that, start to kind of, if you really want to heal yourself, you need to start a ritual. And Rub is to correspond to the song later, Ritual Wear. And if you look at it, one title, You Do, corresponds to good food. Rub corresponds to ritual wear, and so on and so forth. You can go through the list and find something new probably. And that's also something to decipher. Maybe I'm telling the secret, but so far nobody found it yet. But I have hinted it in my inserts sheet. I hope one day people can find it.
Like that is that flew right over my head. I had no idea.
Right now you know.
Yeah. And why did you want to put You Do and Rub together?
Because the last note ended in the note that I really want to go into the next stage of mind and psyches, which is to shift from being sad and being self-doubt to elevating and break out of this thing. And it's sort of a track that let you inspire your surroundings a lot. That's why I put a lot of field recordings into this track. And I think it would be good to start with the instrument that I'm so familiar with, that comes from a childhood, to something that's sort of alienated and very uncommon, and connect them all. And it makes sense sonically too, to put it right after You Do.
So Lightburst is the second track on the album, and it is the first track that relates directly to a section from The Dream. Could you tell us what this song is meant to represent?
Lightburst, yes, it's the moment I felt when the light burst through the stone. And when something comes so strongly at you, you almost feel like you're gonna totally collapse if you're too weak, or you have to have some kind of strength to power it through. So Lightburst is a song to power it through.
The song has a gigantic soundscape, like it lives in its own world. How do you go about creating these worlds in your music?
This song is actually really interesting because it's actually part of the excerpts and sonic bits from a performance I did back in China. It's called Unwrap, where I created 5 monsters, which I created 5 bio instruments for them to wear. And each bio instrument is actually part of their body part, but they can also play music out of it. And that's sort of like sound from your voice, because people don't think of voice as an instrument quite a lot, because everybody has it, first of all. And it seems that there's no skills requirement. And I hope not. I hope people really believe you don't need any skills for singing. And Comparatively, if you take a guitar and break it, you can get a new guitar. But if you break your voice, you can repair it in such a way that it won't be the same anymore. I used to have a knot in my voice as well. I'm very well aware of voice as an instrument, but very unique and fragile at the same time. And to power it through with voice is to show vulnerability, and to show something that's sonically vibrating in your body. So I transferred that sonic bits to this song from those five monsters. And I think it represents the personalities in those five monsters in this track, which is all weaving together, but also because the performance ended with all the monsters put down their instrument but start to sing together. That's why I started to sing and chant in the second part of the song.
Could you tell us about the third track, WC? Why does it have that name? Of course, the name of public restrooms.
During pandemic, it was quite a hard time for me personally in the US because my green card got denied at the time. And right before, so in 2020, we were supposed to play Robin with my band. And I had such a extremely hard time in the Belgian consulate where, you know, a lot of question was proposed, especially towards my identity of being a Chinese. But I found the quality of downgrading myself to the extreme, to the hell, to absolutely nothing, so that I could feel at ease in an environment that I'm totally out of control with. In Chinese public, it's just public restrooms. It's just a pit ditch that you squat down, take the shit or pee, and you see, you know, your shit pile up on others. It's quite gross, but for me, it's romantic. You know, people grew apart during pandemic as well, but strangers shit somehow pile together and die together. And I found it quite romantic. And that's the thing that I'm most interested in, absurdity. But there's a warmth in this kind of absurdity, and it hold me up quite a lot. So WC is to tribute to this kind of scenario. So yeah, WC, and I love dancing to it. It's quite a song to dance with your besties.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, you know, in the US, most news you will read about China is the government being really, you know, ridiculous or did some bad things. And I have thought about it quite a lot because in the long run, especially pandemic, I definitely felt that there's an impact on how the news created a sphere for people to believe a demographic, a group of people that are definitely different from you based on their government. In the song, you know, from a perspective of the US media, Chinese people are populated and they're still very primal in many ways. So I portray me and my friends as shit as well. And shit's gonna have fun too. Why not? And look at us shit having fun. So that's definitely a ironic and adult notion to the whole thing.
And that having fun with it is that also why the song is so dancey?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes, to dance on the reality, whether it's pain or joy, dance on it, step on it.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Two Rocks, One Bird is another section inspired by your dream. What is this track supposed to represent?
There's an old saying that one rock, two birds. I don't know if you heard of it or not. To tell the efficiency of a tool, where, you know, one arrow on a ball, you get two birds down. That's like great. You're a good hunter. This song is to deviate from that efficiency for not only connecting the overlapping part, but also two rocks, a bird, to really drag down the civilization a little bit, to create a scenario where efficiency is not the pivot of our beings. For every one of us, we're a bird, and we have a lot of rocks coming our way. Maybe not only two rocks, maybe 100 rocks during our lifetime, and we need to dodge those rocks. And this song is also to take that notion and to dodge. It doesn't know when to come yet. That's why in the beginning of the song, you hear these patterns going on, and you're like, okay, so when would it start? And it start out of nowhere. And that's how I feel about these rocks, because they just start out of nowhere. And as a bird, you need to dodge them, but you need to dance. You need to dance a beautiful way and dodge it elegantly. And the rocks, they're part of your dance. If they're not coming your way, you don't know where to turn the next time around. If you hear the sonic vibe, there's a lot of sudden hits and sudden collation of all the notes together. And that's to simulate rock coming your way. Somehow they melt together, but somehow they don't. And that's two rocks, a bird. And it also contributed a lot of, even though it's really twisted and distorted, an opera-esque voice to it. Because I was an opera singer back in long time ago. To actually bring it back is very meaningful to me.
It's a crazy track, right? There's so much happening. It's probably one of the busiest tracks on the album.
Yeah.
It has a lot of crazy sounds, and it sounds like a lot of samples. Do you record these sounds yourself?
Yeah, I have a full library full of sounds. So I either put them in my contact instrument pack, or I just pile them and create 10 tracks of instruments that I play all suddenly, and also notch them a little bit far apart. So they create this very interesting rhythmic session together. Not quite in line, but they all belong to the same metric, so to speak.
Do you have any like non-instruments that you also use as sounds?
Yeah, WC has the toilet flush, and Two Rocks a Bird. There's definitely air sound that I put in to push the sonic a little bit further. There's throwing sound where I just put my object on the table like that and created a drum pattern. And also lay out as a atmosphere by creating a lot of reverb and delay into it. That is the sound design part, where I did a lot of field recording samples to simulate a kind of environment that I would like to put this song in.
Overlay is a beautiful and grandiose track. Could you tell us how you approached creating this song?
Again, I wanted to be abrupt. And at first, my voice came first, and I was noodling with my piano. So I recorded the piano with my voice simultaneously. But instead of the piano, in the end, I put samples in each note. But instead of do, re, mi, fa, sol, I put a sound like this, a sound like this, a sound like rather than do, re, mi, fa, sol. So it creates a rhythmic session of all the samples colliding. So that's the first layer. And then I come out to create more of a abrupt mission with the beginners. So I loop a sample again till people kind of become really numb into this pattern and suddenly come in with the as a really funny dance kind of.
I think that's very interesting. That's a very unique way to go about kind of creating those rhythmic kind of dancey atmospheres. I definitely haven't heard that something like that before, which is awesome. So
Yeah.
Overlay is one of the only tracks written in English. How is writing songs in English different from writing songs in Chinese?
That's a good question. I think it had to do with a lot of cultural references because our language is such a construct based on cultures. I feel like if somebody needs to study cultures, they need to study the language pretty in depth because the language carries a lot of the nuances, not only in a textual way, but also in a social way. So I would say the Chinese songs really delve into another me, probably more natural, more in depth of my childhood. English had to deal with a lot of adulthood, how I navigate myself using a language that was not born with, try to learn as I go, sort of deal. And Overlap is quite an interesting song because that's when a time where, my bandmates, I have a band, ECW, Elizabeth Colwell, and, the pandemic absolutely can put the band together because shows get canceled. But we made plans to reconvene and come together again. We had meetings when everybody talk about things, plans, and also asked when I will be possibly coming back to the US. And that had always struck some kind of anxiety for me because at the time I wasn't planning to go back because my visa is ending and I have failed obtaining a green card at the time. All the unpleasant experiences. And it was great to actually connect with my own culture. And I have never been living in China for a longer time, like longer than 2 months, for 13 years. So those 2 years, 1.5 years, were actually quite beneficial to me because I grew and I grew out of old habits of only creating songs that, it only express a surface scratch or pain. Not that those pains are not important, but I almost forgot the ability to be happy in a natural state or creating something that's happier or takes the notion of being sarcastic or being funnier, which had always been my quality or personalities. So when I received those calls, naturally it re-established the relationship back to English after being a Chinese environment for so long. And that's why I wrote in English. And also, this is actually a melody that I heard in my dream that I recorded.
So that whole concept of overlapping, of course, things being connected with each other. Could you talk more about that? How do you see that in the real world?
I will say, and it's kind of interesting now I think of it, that me in the US are very different from me living in China. My habits of speaking, my ways of behaving, and my psyche as well. To live in both worlds, I think it requires a lot of navigation, a lot of skills to balance the two together, to not go insane. Because oftentimes I feel I'm going insane to suddenly abandon a reality and move back to a country that's so far away and live for a while and then going back again. Every connections I have in each country is sort of abruptly interrupt by my moving to find the same kind of, to find myself navigating it is itself a very hard task that I will see that it's a challenge of finding the overlapping part and move on with that and to learn the differences as well, to learn the shades that are not being covered, to learn the outskirts that are left out and to live with it.
So do you think the dream, when you heard that in your dream, did you come to a realization that clears stuff up for you?
It definitely clears out the calling part. I think my friends are calling me and I need to go. It's very hard actually because I think as time goes by and as we grow older, we often wonder what we have in this world that could create a base and foundation that we will probably not be losing for a long time. To live in both China and the US, I have to let go of that. I have to be okay with not establishing a strong base in both countries. And I often kind of struggle with that as well. But to learn to let go is also fine. To know what's more important in this case is to answer my friend's call and to go back there to fulfill my responsibility as a singer in a band, to not let my friend to hang around for too long with all these tour plans not being fulfilled.
Thank you. Thank you for being so open during this interview. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for asking
Yeah.
a lot of good questions.
Yeah. So Ritual Wear, it might be my favorite song from the album. Could you tell me what the narrative of the song is about?
It's definitely a tiptoe song. Again, coming off being rubbed, the ritual wears start to have the magic. And in the lyric line, there's a lot of lines about church, religion. My family was Christian, but I don't think that they're royal in any sense, or they're fully committed Christians, even though they go to church. So I've been wondering a lot of roles of church and religion to oneself quite a lot. And rubbing the ritual wear is like rubbing the wand and rubbing the cup, rubbing the every pieces of gold in a church, to kind of need to create this chance of connecting to a higher deity or your faith and your hope. So in this song, I try to set up a ritual where I can delve into their spheres and talk about my perspective of church, which is church is where faith are amplified, but also twisted. It has a high chance to delve and connect it to other influences that had nothing to do with one's faith. For example, politics. So I was saying about Jesus had to endure the pain of loving and suffering. And back then, people can feel this person, feel his pain. But as time goes by, the ability to feel was less and less. In the lyrics, I was talking about that's okay, because without the church, and just find yourself and find your own connections through your faith. It doesn't have to be a religion. It can be you believe in yourself so much, or your belief is your pet. Sure, why not? So this song is to rub them, to connect with them, and overlap is to regain the ability to feel again, to really reconnect with this ability to overlap.
How did you translate that to song, that feeling of wanting to go towards connection?
Apart from the sonic atmosphere I was building, I put myself in a very vulnerable and totally direction of vocal lines. I love to see my voice grow and love to see it grow old. And I love to hear it that's so eager to pronounce the Chinese word and the lyrics rather than create a somosphere that portrays some kind of personification in some sort. Oh, this voice is so beautiful. Yes, it could be beautiful, but this is not where I'm going anymore. And by doing so, I think I show my vulnerability. And it's really interesting that this is your first album that you listen to of mine, because for many audiences that had listened to my previous album, they will always tell me that this album is so poppy. I really love that, because it's not that I want to be poppy. Never that. It's that I realized my state of mind had changed, and that reflected on my music.
Do you think also that it kind of went to a more poppy sound is because you wanted to make more happy music?
Sure.
Yeah.
One could say that for sure. It's cool that, a lot of new audiences such as you went in and noticed that, yes, it's somehow relevant to pop, somehow relevant to a hooky little melody, but in other parts it's just bizarre. Why would you end a song like this? Why would you put this little dots here? And I think that's all signs of my creation. Yeah, I love listening to people criticizing my music because that's I took that as really interesting.
I can see that for a lot of people, like the whole pop label can be kind of an insult. But I think it's also I think that connection that a lot of people have to pop music is also something very nice to have. You know, that new audiences can come in and kind of connect with even the more abstract parts of your music just because you have kind of a pop edge to it. Dream Hacker ends with Good Fool. Could you
Mm.
explain what the title Good Fool means?
In Chinese, it means silly beauty. So the beauty could mean a leaves, a flower, a tree that's beautiful, a person that's beautiful, and that person is a fool. There's a thing in Chinese where, it's called 大智若愚. It means if somebody gain a certain maximum or more and more wisdom down the road, that person initially would just become somebody foolish to others, or it doesn't make sense, or appear to be a child. Wisdom is something that you believe in, and life goes on. That's kind of the attitude I want to live on, because as the rocks comes in, you can't really care too much. Just live your life better and try to love your friend and make things that you believe in.
Yeah, I have written down. To me, the song has a distinct feeling of resolution and acceptance. Like that's what
Yes,
I felt when listening to it. So it's very
great.
cool to have that you have that feeling too. That was deliberate. That was something you wanted. It's a really nice closing off point for the album, of course, because it shows like where you want to go. Right? It's transformation. It's a really beautiful way to end the album. Lastly, I want to ask you one question. This is the last
Mhm.
question of the interview. Why do you
Yes,
think we dream?
great question. Yeah, why do we dream? I have a very scientific explanation, or a crazy explanation.
Hmm, interesting. I am not really into the whole scientific explanation because that's kind of boring. I'm more interested in what's your explanation. What do you think?
I think it's another you living in another universe, trying to connect with you. You two interchanged.
So it's like the dream is a connection to another world or another you.
Yes.
I really like that, but it really feels like this album for you is such a change in direction in terms of like the way the music sounds, sure, but it's also the change in direction of how you want to lead your life, whether you're an artist or whether you're a person. A change for the better or to a more happy space, and to have that realization come out of a dream, it kind of makes you wonder about how important dreams are for the decisions we make.
It feels like Dream Hacker is ages ago already, because it's almost a year
Mm.
since I came back to the US. But yes, the philosophies and the messages that I've been able to hack and decipher will always accompany me. For people that are studying philosophy, I only think that a philosopher use their whole life to really prove something and to live their philosophy. Philosophy is not theory, but experience. Dream Hacker will always be in my mind and heart and live in my body.
It's very nice to end on that. I feel like it's a very good message for anyone out there. Thank you so much for this interview. It's been really eye opening in terms of how the album is, but also really eye opening to how this album is connected to you as a person, to
Mhm.
where you've gone, and it's fascinating to hear you talk about it. So thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you,
Sincerely,
Mel.
it's awesome. You've been awesome, very open and kind. Yeah, thank you so much. In general, fantastic album. I love it. I'm gonna never stop listening to it.
Oh,
And yeah, I wish you the best.